Hi everybody, welcome back to my YouTube channel. Last time on WQT, Workshop Quick Takes, we explored the process of buying and building a Ryzen 5 based PC using a $1,000 budget. And here it is, same monitors you've seen in all of my videos, but now backed by a much better PC than what I was using before. However, every computer hobbyist who goes down this road knows that you buy the system, you build the system, you're in love with the system, then you start to see that one thing that's holding you back a little bit. And maybe a reason, some time has passed, I've got a couple more paychecks under the belt, I can afford to finally fix that one thing. That's happened to us. And for those of you who are desperately hoping that we decided to replace that Zen 1 architecture 3400G with the unused graphics core using something from AMD's Zen 2 family, sorry, didn't happen. In fact, we've been using the quad core we've got and watching it in Task Manager, and we're just not maxing it. A lot of our work is being offloaded onto the NVIDIA GPU, which we bought specifically because we were planning to do video editing. However, in doing video editing, we noticed that we were being lagged out a bit by using a spinning hard drive as the location for our project workspace. That has an easy fix, one which a lot of people can do, and that's to simply buy an SSD and install it. Buying an SSD was the easiest option, and it plugs into a standard SATA port. So that's what we're going to do today, and to make it worthwhile, we're going to pop open 4 systems of various makes and ages and show you what kind of obstacles you might encounter doing this. Let's dive in. It's going to involve this machine that we built, our new Ryzen 5 system, and we are going to add on a 1 terabyte solid state drive. Now, we're not changing out the main system drive. If you do that, that's obviously a bit more work because you have to image the drive somehow. To make this worthwhile, we're going to actually look into 4 different systems of various ages to see what that might look like. Once you open your box, if it's not a brand new system, you might get into it and be a little confused by what's in there. So let's take a look. And again, I haven't opened this one yet, but here's another solid state drive, exact same format. This is an older Intel 320 series. We'll set that aside for now, along with that, just so that we have a visual reference for what we're looking at here. This here is an Antec Sonata. It's about, 12, 13 years old. It's an older case. It was a really nice case in its day, very well equipped, very thoughtfully laid out, very well built. The main problem with this one on a modern system is that only this side panel over here comes off. That makes it hard to get to the backside for doing modern heat sinks. This here is an older Dell Precision workstation. Why would we be looking at upgrading something like this? Well, business class machines from most tier 1 OEMs, including Dell, HP, tend to be built better than their consumer grade stuff, and as a result they last longer. So a business might have bought this Xeon system as a CAD workstation, let's say, and then 3 to 5 years later they're done with it. It goes to e-waste or to an eBay vendor or whatever, and maybe you got your hands on it. Well, it's an old system. It's still pretty powerful and useful, but things like hard drives are upgrades you might be considering. Turning over here, this is a fractal defined Nano S, I believe. And it has a mini ITX style in it, which is a little bit different. So it'll be fun to look in there and see how they provide it for hard drives in that. And then, of course, this Antec P7 is the system we just built. This will be a fun little experience to open that back up and see where that goes. All right, before we actually get around to opening this and putting it in there, let's just use this old Intel drive as a representative example and look at these other systems. So let's just start with the Antec. Antec Sonata Mid-Tower. This was a very nice case 12 years ago. It's still a very nice case now, but it is getting a little outdated, unfortunately. Let's go ahead and take a look at what's in there. So there you see, it's a very thoughtful layout. We've got our ATX motherboard over here. We do have a top-mounted power supply. Anymore, I prefer the bottom-mounted, but still a good case. And the way this one manages its hard drive layout is it uses these removable trays. SATA power connector, and my SATA data connector, and I can slide this tray out and see how it's laid out. Now this format here, you'll notice because it's older, these slots, and let's pull out an empty one to compare, only support 3.5 drives. Now they support them very nicely. They have these rubber isolation mounts, very quiet, very easy to pull and reconnect. The problem is, how do you connect this? Well, this is an example of a case that if you want to continue using it, you're either going to have to buy an adapter bracket or you're going to have to modify this tray. Now, in this case, you'll notice it is already using an Intel SSD, an older one actually, but what I did for this one is I had an adapter tray around. This is a tray that fits in a 3.5 slot, and it has the attachment points on the bottom and on the side, depending on how it was set up. And then it also has these little slots in the bottom which is how the SSD mounts up. You can see an example of a couple of the screws right there. So that's how that one goes in. If I did not have that adapter bracket, my other option would be take a look at this and say, okay, it slides in this way. My connectors are on this side. I have mounting holes here. Can I modify this bracket to fit? And the answer is, yeah, just barely. I can actually drill 4 new screw holes and put hard drive screws in there. So that's one possibility. The other way people sometimes do this is they just get stick-on Velcro and put it on here and put it on here and say it's not heavy anyway and there's no moving parts in it. It's not going to go anywhere. Good enough. So there are options. This isn't the end of the world when you're using an old case, but it is something to remember that you might encounter. So, old, very good case. Still reusable if I really want to, but it is going to take some modifications to put somewhat more modern hardware in it. Option 2, upgrade an OEM system, and in this case it's an OEM system that's gotten a little bit on the old side, but it was really fast and high quality when it was new. It's still somewhat upgradable now. You might have gotten one cheap off of eBay or from a e-waste disposal day, and here you are. Now, pay attention to the different configurations you might encounter because on the last case, like a lot of modern ATX cases, I have the front facing this way, the rear facing this way, and I access the motherboard from this side. Well, not so on a lot of Dells, to name one example. I pull this here and, oh, something just dropped towards me. So the actual panel I need to remove is on the opposite side. The layout is reversed. All right, looking in here, you can see this one has had an SSD applied also. But this Dell system is a little bit different in how they choose to do it. These two here pop up to release the clamp, and then, yeah, I have this whole tray here that lifts out. And then, of course, the rest of the computer is in here. And it is upgradable. It is a nice layout. It's got a really large, not quite standard ATX layout, and it's inverted. So in fact, if I flip the chassis upside down, now it looks like a conventional ATX layout, but with the power supply on the bottom and then my ATX motherboard up on top. But that's just how Dell chooses to do it. They have top facing down, I guess, compared to the normal ATX layout. So this one here, I've got a similar issue as before. It uses, let's see if I can get one of these out carefully. There we go. It uses a very nice clip retention system, completely screwless. There's 2 little permanent nubs here and 2 little flexible nubs here that become permanent when I snap these down. It doesn't wiggle enough for the drive to pop out anymore. So that's great, again, if you are using a conventional 3.5 drive. Problem, how did I get this SSD in here? Again, same story. This particular system is old enough, it doesn't have provisions for SSDs. If you have a Precision workstation about, I don't know, 3-ish years newer than this one, then they started coming with them, and of course Dell provided a solution for those. So what I had to do instead is I created a drive caddy. This here is just angled like a L aluminum bracket from Home Depot and a piece of scrap aluminum here, which I screwed together to fit the space of a conventional 3.5 drive, and here's the holes. And then my 2.5-inch SATA drive fits on top of it. It works, but again, if you didn't want to go to that trouble, here's a nice big flat space where you could put down, say, some double stick tape or some sticky backed Velcro if you want to be able to pull it in and out regularly, and just line it up so that you've got enough overhang to get your cables in and out, and you're home free. But again, this one here, something you'd want to pay attention to if you were doing that, is that we have this protrusion from this plastic memory cooling shroud here. So if I get this too far over, I might get cable interference. Okay, another format you might see hanging around. This is what is called Mini ITX, and it looks at first glance like it might be some sort of a tiny ATX tower, and that is the general idea, but the motherboard is a different layout. Once again, we do have a removable side panel. This one is nice because the thumb screws are captive. And this one does have a little polycarbonate case window. I didn't buy it for that. In fact, this case I got from a contest at the Old Tech Report and built the system into it. But again, this one nicely has the removable back pan with a bit of a sound dampening panel, and to reiterate something we discussed in our previous video, this one here also has a nice access point for rear heatsink brackets. So that's something you'll get on newer cases that you won't necessarily get on older ones. Now that we're looking at the back side, notice that we have another hard drive back here, and this, of course, is your 3.5 hard drive. And the way Fractal did this, let's turn it around and look from the top, is they decided to put a panel back here and a bracket down here with a lot of slots so that you can mount almost anything you want in any configuration you want until you run out of space. In this case, the hard drive has a tray that it's mounted on that came with the case, but it's adjustable up and down. And so I have a 3.5 archival hard drive on the back side here. And then on the inside, we have this neat little tray down here, which is designed to be able to hold a 3.5 inch if you want. Or you put a 3.5 on this way. Or if you wanted to, you could work out a way of mounting it directly back onto one of these slots. So options, this case is going to be easier to work with simply because it's newer. And regarding the format, again, this is a mini ITX motherboard. It's very, very small. You'll notice it's not much larger than 2 standard memory sticks in either direction, really. It does have a single PCI Express graphics slot if you want to upgrade that. But in this case, it's a Skylake GPU, and I'm using the onboard graphics because this is just a very low-end media PC. All right, fourth configuration we're going to look at. We have here our Antec P7 Silent. Again, you've already seen this one in the Ryzen Up video, so we won't go too in depth on how the layout is located in here. Look at our previous video if you want to see that, but today let's just look at what's involved with hard drives. Okay, you might recall from our previous video, none of the hard drive access is on this side in this one. There is a 5.25 bay up here with removable slot tabs, which I use to put in a Blu-ray drive, but in fact, on this one, we access all of our hard drives from the back side. So there they are. Down here we have this caddy, which can be moved back and forth or removed entirely by adjusting these screws, so I could slide it back and forth. This one does have the slot tabs that pop out, but conveniently, this one also has a pair of drive trays designed to house a couple of these. So one of those go in there, more or less. The cables are going to plug in on the side. And to remove it, there's a convenient thumb screw. And the whole tray piece here just pops out, just like that. If the cables fit the right direction, well, it'll go in. It's going to be a little bit tight, but they did provide for 2. And also, you have the option of screwing it in both ways. You can use the bottom mount screw holes, like these, or you can use the side screw holes, whichever way suits your fancy. All right, next step. We have here our SSD. It's a Crucial MX500, 1000 gigabyte or 1 terabyte roughly. Let's go ahead and pop this open, and shouldn't be much more in here other than the SSD itself. I don't think it's shipped with many accessories, if any at all. Nope, that's all there is to it. Take note of what it did come with though. Obviously we've got our little manual here, not interested in that so much. But it did come with this little stick-on spacer. Just remove a couple pieces of sticky tape, and it goes on up here. You may have noticed there was actually one of those affixed to the SSD that was placed in this Dell, although it wasn't doing anything. The reason for this is, in some configurations, especially some older laptops, the slot where this slides in supports a larger, older size, and so you need this spacer on there to keep it from flopping around. In this case, however, we're going to be just screwing this down, and that's all there is to it. Very light too, it weighs almost nothing. Okay, so this is going to be my power connector. It's going to need to go over here. I hope it's long enough to reach, otherwise I'm going to have to reroute some cables, but yeah, it'll work. One problem with this configuration here, and I'm not sure why Antec didn't anticipate it, is that these cables can get pretty tight in here, and these SATA connectors are more fragile than you might think. It is possible to blow them right off if you get rough with them. So that one's going to be like that, and the hard drive's going to be down like that, and it will fit. So we're good. It's a little bit tighter than I'd like, but we're good. So I'm going to unplug that again because I don't want to be roughing around with that still on. And now we just attach this the ordinary way. These screws are leftovers that came with the case when I bought it. If you don't have any and your hard drive didn't come with any, you might have to order a screw kit. The screws used to install a hard drive of a 3.5 size are normally a coarser thread because of the heavier device. These ones here are the fine pitch thread. These are the same ones used to install the motherboard when we built this system. Now this thing is so incredibly lightweight, it really doesn't need 4 screws in order to secure it down. But to be thorough, I'll probably go ahead and put 4 in anyway. This is a case where I forgot some advice that I gave last time. Don't tension your screws down until you've got them all started, because what I did there is I got 3 of them in and nicely tensioned, and I was actually blocking the thread for this 4th one. So now I'm going to go ahead and finish tightening this 4th one and then retighten the other 3 over here. Done. In this particular chassis, that's all there is to it. I'm gonna have to get this back in here with my thumb screw. And again, just because this was a little tough to get to, I'm gonna go ahead and install the SATA power cable first. But again, don't manhandle it. Just kind of tuck it back in there. Okay, so that just kind of drops in there and slides back to clip, and then this screw retains it. That's pretty much all there is to it. It's gonna be replacing this drive here. So first I need to copy the contents of this drive over onto this one. Obviously, if you were replacing a system drive, you would need to use some sort of imaging software like, I don't know, Macrim Reflect, Acronis makes something, I think. There's even some old command line based tools that are actually require you to boot off a Linux disk. They're really arcane to work with. So even if you have to buy a little bit of newer drive imaging software for a few bucks, I'd highly recommend it. Less likely to get yourself in trouble. But in this case, I'm going to go ahead and copy everything off of this drive onto this drive before removing this one and setting it aside and just holding onto it temporarily in case I find out there was a copy error, then I'll come back and do it again. So that means my archival drive, the 6 terabyte one, is the one I'm actually going to steal the connector off of for now and just bring it up here and plug it in. And again, there's that neat little L in there. Make sure that's correctly oriented and that you're not trying to force it on in some rough way. Another thing to pay attention to as well is that many modern SATA cables have these nice little spring-loaded connectors. So if you're trying to remove it again, make sure you're pressing that. Must emphasize, these ports are fragile. Almost everyone out there who has been building PCs for any number of years has broke at least one of these. So there we are. That's all it takes. We now have our hard drive still down here. This one's going to be coming out later after I copy the data off of it. We have our replacement SSD up here. And of course, we do still have our 512 gigabyte M2 in here working as our system drive. If I was upgrading that one with another M2, that gets you into another whole bunch of trouble because now you've got to get an M2 to SATA adapter of some kind and do your imaging. That's not the case today. We're simply going to copy the data off of our drive down here onto this drive up here, remove this drive down here, and reconnect the 6 terabyte archival drive. So there it is. Fairly simple once you know what to look for. Just keep in mind as we've gone through today, there's a lot of different ways these can be mounted, and some of your older systems may require some sort of mod or hack in order to actually get an SSD in there because they don't natively support this screw layout. Hey everyone, thanks for joining us today. We appreciate you taking the time. Hopefully there was something useful in that, and if you're now thinking about an SSD drive upgrade for your PC, go for it. It's a very simple upgrade, something you can do, doesn't have to cost a lot. We spend about $100. So whatever your upgrade need is, dive on in and tinker with that box again. See you next time, whenever that is.
Has anyone seen my phone?